The West Senate chambers shimmered and in the light of twin suns filtered through the crystalline dome overhead. Polished marble floors stretched out in concentric circles, each tier lined with ornate seating platforms hovering gently, held aloft by invisible representatives from 100 worlds gathered here today, each garbed in ceremonial armor or protective shielding that flickered and hummed softly around them. Gleaming, kinetic barriers, shimmering cloaks designed to deflect plasma, all of them carefully maintained symbols of strength, tradition, and caution. Except for one delegation. The humans. Sitting calmly, almost casually, in simple tailored uniforms of navy and white, they were entirely unarmored, completely exposed in a room where even words could become weapons. Ripples of whispers echoed around the chamber. Alien eyes of all colors and shapes flicked toward the humans, then away, some in disbelief, others in curiosity. The towering representative, with his jagged obsidian scales and ridged brow, leaned in toward his neighbor, a slender diplomat wrapped in glistening silk shields. They sit bare, the growled softly, his voice like grinding stones. Not even a force field. The tendrils shimmered nervously. They never wear protection. It is their custom. The snorted, a sound like volcanic steam. Or their arrogance. At the center of the grand chamber, the Senate dais rose slowly, bathed in pale gold light. The assembled crowd quieted as the presiding hologram of the High Arbiter materialized, flickering into perfect form with a single gesture. Let the council come to order. The voice intoned, deep and resonant, vibrating through stone and bone alike. From the human platform, Ambassador Rachel Lee rose gracefully. She was not tall compared to many of the delegates, but her posture radiated confidence. She wore no ornamentation beyond the simple silver pin of Earth's diplomatic corps. In her hand, only a small, unassuming, and fragile. As she stepped forward onto the platform, the spotlight fell on her, and the entire chamber watched in utter silence. The heavy brow furrowed deeper. She walks to the floor alone, he muttered, incredulous. Da didn't respond. Her tendrils quivered with unease. The silence pressed in as Ambassador Lee took her place at the speaker's dais. She looked around calmly, her eyes meeting those of warriors clad in, rulers hidden behind shimmering veils of protection, and emissaries who had never left there, without force shields activated. Her eyes were steady and afraid. She pressed a button on her pad, and a soft hologram of the Terran sector appeared, rotating slowly above her. Esteemed delegates, she began, her voice measured and clear. I stand before you not clad in armor, but clothed in trust. Trust in this council, and trust in the promise that words, not weapons, shape the future. Her words hung in the air like crystal chimes. A rustle of discomfort spread among the seats. The delegate's fists clenched, his barbed knuckles cracking. Foolish, he muttered. But he couldn't look away. Ambassador Lee's gaze swept over them. I know there are questions, she continued. I know many wonder why humanity does not fortify itself here as you all do. Her lips curled into the faintest of smiles. It is not that we do not understand danger. It is not that we are fearless. It is that fear will not be what defines us here. If this chamber is truly sacred, if it is truly a place for peace and reason, then no shield is stronger than trust. A silence followed, heavier than before. The delegate sat back, eyes narrowed. Across the chamber, a sleek, crystalline form shifted. The beings of living glass chimed with approval in their language of tones. But others remained stiff and guarded. A low whisper from the shadows reached the ears, the young assistant beside him, barely audible. They do not wear armor because they believe none will strike them. Ta shook his head slowly. No, he rambled, almost reluctantly impressed. They do not wear armor because they are the weapon. The ambassador's final words echoed across the grand hall. We come to you. And if that hand is struck, know this, we will rise stronger. With a simple nod, she stepped back, in hand, her posture still serene. The chamber sat frozen for a moment longer. Then slowly, The High Arbiter's hologram inclined its head. Let it be recorded, the voice announced, that humanity stands enshielded. Rachel Lee returned to her seat, untouched, unshaken, and entirely unarmored. All around her, whispers became quiet nods of respect. And somewhere in the deep shadows of the grand chamber, fear shifted, not fear for humans, but fear of them. The tension in the Senate chambers had only grown after Ambassador Rachel Lee's calm but defiant speech. Behind their masks of protocol and tradition, the other delegates murmured, confused and narrowed. But the humans didn't just sit exposed without armor. They didn't seem to feel vulnerable at all. The next day, a special closed session was called. Only the most senior council members were invited, and security was tight, yet, as always, the humans arrived with no barriers, no kinetic shields, and no visible weapons. Commandant Eli Grant walked beside Rachel Lee, wearing a simple black uniform. His eyes scanned the room, not in fear, but with measured calculation. The guards lining the entrance wore full battle gear. Plasma rifles were holstered and ready, but none dared raise them. The humans entered like they owned the room, though they made no such claim. At the center of the chamber stood a circular negotiation platform surrounded by. The council leaders took their places, towering with their molten armor, the delegation shimmering behind layered shields, the Christine pulsing with shifting colors, and their kitey shells humming softly as if tuned to vibrations in the air. All watched as the humans sat down, again completely bare of armor. The High Arbiter's voice boomed. The purpose of this session is to question the wisdom, or folly, of Earth's chosen practice. Rachel Lee rose without hesitation. Ask what you will, she said, her voice steady. The first to speak was Avda. His voice rumbled with restrained scorn. Ambassador Lee, does Earth's delegation presume that no threat can touch them here? Or is this arrogance meant to provoke? Rachel's expression never changed. Neither, delegate. We presume only that this council chamber is a place where truth stands above fear. Narrowed his burning eyes. But fear is wisdom. Caution keeps civilizations alive. Rachel tilted her head. Fear, she said softly, also cages them. There was a pause. Next, a shimmering projection from the delegation formed into a question. And if an attack came, Ambassador? If trust shattered in this very chamber, what then would Earth's representatives do? Commander Grant spoke now, his voice quiet but firm. You misunderstand. We are not unprepared. We simply believe the strongest armor is the certainty that we can handle any threat, with or without matter. Left, a harsh grinding sound. Bravado. Words. Commander Grant met his gaze unflinching. We do not threaten. We state facts. The delegate leaned forward, antennae pulsing. And if provoked, Rachel Lee's eyes met theirs. We end the provocation. Quickly. Completely. A ripple of energy passed through the chamber. No boast, no threat, just truth. The High Arbiter's hologram flickered thoughtfully. Perhaps demonstration is in order. A sudden pulse of energy filled the room. Defense protocols activated, a simulated security breach scenario. Holographic attackers appeared around the chamber's edge, their weapons drawn. Most delegates immediately activated personal shields. The braced with their obsidian plate, the vanished behind shimmering veils, the hardened their exoskeletons. The humans did nothing but stand. The holograms advanced, plasma bolts crackling toward the center. But before they could make contact, Commander Grant moved, faster than the eye could track. In one fluid motion, he stepped forward, raised his palm, and a brilliant pulse of energy erupted from a small device barely the size of a ring on his finger. The simulated attack dissolved instantly. Silence fell. Rachel Lee's voice cut through the stand stillness. We do not wear armor because our protection is built into who we are. Training, innovation, confidence, and above all, restraint. The delegate pulsed gently. Restraint. Rachel nodded. We could have preemptively struck. We did not. We could have overwhelmed that scenario with force. We chose precision. The High Arbiter spoke, now with something close to reverence. And you trust this to never fail. Rachel smiled softly. Nothing is infallible. But trust is a risk we choose to take. If we cannot practice that here, in this council, where can we? Spoke again, but his voice was quieter. Your people are not fearless. But you behave as if fear is irrelevant. Commandant Grant nodded. Because fear exists to be mastered, not to dictate. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Slowly, the delegate skyty softened to a pale gold, a signal of acknowledgement. The High Arbiter's voice rose again. Let it be known that humanity's approach is unconventional, but perhaps instructive. Rachel Lee inclined her head. We are all students of one another. The closed session ended. As the humans rose to leave, no one spoke. But the silent respect in that room echoed louder than words. The days following the closed session in the Senate chambers were filled with whispers, but not of mockery, rather of curiosity and unease. Humans continued to move through the galactic capita without armor, without weapons on display, and yet with an undeniable sense of command. They seemed to radiate a quiet power that no alloy or force field could match. That had they brought an unexpected summons to the observation deck, a massive glass expanse suspended above the great gravity wells of the Capita city, reserved for viewing military demonstrations. Every major delegation was present, each seated in private pods of luxury, peering out at the ward where fleet exercises were about to commence. Yet all eyes drifted to the human pod, where Commandant Eli Grant and Ambassador Rachel Lee sat side by side, once again with no armor or visible protection. A soft chime rang, and the High Arbiter's voice filled the chamber. Today we observe simulated conflict maneuvers of allied fleets. Earth's contingent has volunteered to demonstrate their tactics. The assembled delegates exchanged wary glances. The shimmering forms flickered with intrigue, the set heavy and skeptical in their molten armor, and the Christine, pulsed with shades of cautious curiosity. From below the deck, the vastness of space shimmered with hundreds of vessels, sleek fighters, heavy cruisers, and dreadnoughts, all representing different worlds. But then, among the massive ships, a handful of tiny specks appeared, human vessels. Small, fast, and assuming. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the council. Where is the armor? The shielding arrays? Someone whispered. Rachel Lee did not answer. Instead, she gave the briefest nod to Commandant Grant. He spoke into his calmly. Earth Fleet, begin. The first exercise began with a simulated assault on the human formation by a coalition fleet. Waves of plasma fire and disruptor bolts streaked across space stirred the human crafts. But the human ships danced. They didn't block or absorb. They slipped through gaps before they fully formed. Algorithms predicting enemy movement on a scale far beyond conventional computing. The larger ships tried to corner them, but human vessels used gravity wells and maneuvering that defied probability. Within moments, the entire simulated fleet found itself outmaneuvered and effectively disabled by surgical strikes. The council sat in stunned silence. The delegate finally spoke. You wear no armor because you never stand still long enough to need it. But it wasn't over. The next test was a sabotage scenario, an enemy vessel infiltrating Earth's flagship. All eyes turned to the projection as the enemy agents appeared on board. No defense drones activated, no blessed doors sealed. Instead, human crew members met them, unarmored, unarmed. But they moved like water, redirecting attacks, using the enemy's momentum against them. A simulation of neutralization so fast and efficient that the opposing agents were incapacitated in under 30 seconds. A hushed awe fell over the chamber. Commandant Grant's voice carried over the calm channel. Armor slows reflexes. Fear clouds decisions. We train until neither is necessary. The delegate tilted its head. And what if training is not enough? Rachel Lee finally answered, soft and steady. Then we adapt. That is our greatest armor of all. The final demonstration was unexpected. a simulated planetary assault. Enemy forces landed on a world protected by human colonies. No air-orbiter bombardments, no mechanized armies met them. Instead, the colonists, engineers, farmers, scientists appeared. No armor, no weapons. They greeted the attackers, spoke to them, distracted them, lured them into confusion. Then, terrain shifted. False ground opened into pits. Harmless emissions triggered disorientation. Communication arrays twisted enemy signals into chaos. And then, from shadows, small human squads struck with perfect precision. Not overwhelming force, but just enough to dismantle the attack before it could escalate. The simulation ended. The silence in the observation deck was total. The High Arbiter's hologram pulsed, flickering with respect. You do not rely on armor because you are the weapon, the shield, and the strategy combined. Rachel smiled, serene and confident. We are students of adversity. We have learned to never expect safety, only preparation and response. Slowly, van by van, the delegates stood. Not in protest, not in fear. In recognition. The rumbled lowly, an ancient tone of honor. The flickered bright, a sign of respect. The emitted a slow hum, their symbol of deference. The galaxy had seen force before. They had seen might. But today, they had witnessed something rarer. Mastery without arrogance, strength without intimidation, and defense without armor. And in that moment, the council understood why the humans never needed it. The council chambers, once filled with skepticism and amusement at the humans' lack of armor, now sat heavy with reverence and contemplation. But for the humans, the real test was yet to come. The fourth gathering was not a demonstration, nor a discussion of tactics, it was an emergency summit. An unanticipated threat loomed on the fringes of the galaxy. The swarm, a species long thought dormant, had reawakened and was moving toward densely populated star systems. Their advance was relentless and void of diplomacy. They consumed, adapted, and expanded. No negotiations, no treaties. The council's fleets were mobilizing, but fear gnawed at every delegate. They had faced enemies before, but this was something primal, something that turned steel into weight and armor into suffocation. The envoys sat tensely as the approach projections flickered in holographic orbits around the chamber. Worlds were falling without warning. The council turned, almost as one, to the human delegation. Ambassador Rachel Lee stood without hesitation. No armor, just the simple tailored cloth of Earth's representative. Her presence now carried more weight than the heaviest in the room. Her voice was soft but rang with absolute clarity. We will not retreat. We will meet them where they think they cannot be challenged. The delegate spoke up, their Christian voice trembling. But we have not even mapped their home system. How do you stand against what you cannot see? Rachel smiled gently. We've done it before. We are descended from worlds that tried to kill us every day. We don't need to see the threat to prepare for it. We simply anticipate it will come, and we act accordingly. Commander Eli Grant stepped forward, speaking not to the chamber but to the galaxy. Armor is a shell. It slows you down. But preparation, instinct honed by struggle, that lives in your marrow. They expect to consume the soft and armored. They will not expect those who move like wind and strike like thought. The chamber fell silent. The strategy unfolded with quiet confidence. No massed fleets. No fortress worlds. Instead, humans proposed small, mobile strike groups armed not with brute force but with understanding. They knew the, fed on panic and rigidity. Humans had long practiced something else, adaptability. The first wave of the swarm arrived in the outer rim systems, vast biological masses tearing through a orbit, spilling writhing onto unprepared surfaces. But there, the humans waited. No towering walls, no armored garrisons. Instead, they waited in shadows, beneath the soil, within the clouds. Human teams coordinated not from command bunkers but by instincts honed through generations of training. They lured the forward, then triggered shifts in gravitational fields, collapsing train into pits, isolating portions of the swarm. Light pulses disoriented the hive's central command signals. The, used to overwhelming prey, faltered. There, fractured into confusion. And then the humans struck, silent, rapid, precise. Each human soldier a storm of movement without armor to hinder speed, no heavy plating to betray their steps. They became whispers of force and adaptation, shaping the battlefield by responding faster than the could calculate. Back in the Senate chambers, holographic feeds displayed what seemed like magic. The sprawling waves crumpled against invisible currents. Alien delegates watched in breathless awe as humans worked with minimal resources, weaponizing the very environment, reshaping it into traps and shields, moving as if they had rehearsed these battles for lifetimes. When asked later how they had planned for this, Commandant Grant's answer was simple. We never stopped training for what we didn't understand. We expect chaos. We are comfortable there. As days passed, the swarm was pushed back, first slowly, then decisively. Human forces guided allied ships in fluid maneuvers that confused even the most advanced AI. The strategy was not strength, it was resilience and unpredictability. On the final day, when the last tendrils recalled and shattered, the council called one final emergency assembly. But this time, there was no panic. The question on everyone's lips was the same. How? How did the humans stand exposed and yet unshaken? Rachel Lee finally revealed the truth. We were never unprotected. Our armor is trust in our training, in our adaptability, and in one another. No plating can replicate that. The council chamber erupted into applause not of protocol, but of genuine respect. The humans had shown that true defense was never in steel or shields, it was in being ready to become exactly what the moment required. Long after the victory, the Senate chambers displayed a new sculpture, a simple human silhouette, unarmored, standing beneath a swirling galaxy. The inscription, in every galactic language, read, "Strength lies not in walls, but in will."